Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be all gathered together here. I'm going to start with an Allemande from Bach Suite number 5 in G major.
I just went with simplicity, which for me is Lao Tzu, and I'd like to share that with you. I have just 3 things to teach: simplicity, patience, compassion. These 3 are your greatest treasures. Simple in actions and in thoughts, you return to the source of being. Patient with both friends and enemies, you accord with things the way they are. Compassionate toward yourself, you reconcile all beings in the world. And so it is.
I invite you now to take a deep breath, a deep cleansing breath. And let's take one more. And now go deep, and just let the music carry you where it will.
Thank you so much. Your music always takes me to a quiet place that I need to be at. And Kathi, your centering prayer happens to hit many of the things I'm talking about in my own, perhaps circular way. So welcome everyone. Over the past few months, Karen DeMars, who's a member of our congregation, has mentioned a story to me that she's thought of, a story that I told like 9 years ago. She mentioned it when we were in our physical space. She mentioned it online. And so, to quote the Daily Word today, divinely guided, I finally got it. And I thought, let me look at that story again. So I looked it up and I loved the metaphor. And I thought it was relevant for me and for us today. So I've rewritten today's message, and I dedicate this to you, Karen. About 9 years ago, I was at the little gym in my condo. Someone left a 50-pound dumbbell on the gym floor, and I figured I'd pick it up and put it away, as if I'd ever picked up a 50-pound dumbbell. I put it back on the rack, and my finger got caught between the dumbbell and the metal rack. The finger split, it bled a lot. It really hurt, it did. After that, whenever I'd go to the gym, I noticed my finger pulling back automatically. No conscious work on my part. I thought, cool, instinct. It's protecting itself, protecting me. Well, time passed. And I noticed my finger was still pulling back. I'd watch it pull away from the perceived danger, automatically, not with my direction, at least not with my conscious direction, perhaps unconscious direction, but whose unconscious is it anyway, right? It was as if it had a mind of its own, and it would pull back to safety. But I had been so mindful of how I picked up the much lighter dumbbells and placed them back in the metal rack. There really was no danger anymore. And I thought, the body is amazing, protecting me instinctually. I wonder how else I consciously or unconsciously protect myself. Protect myself in ways that no longer serve any purpose, ways that might not be needed. Ways that not only do not serve any purpose, but ways that may not keep me safe and instead may be barriers to peace and joy and loving connection. And I think that might be true for many of us. Perhaps we were hurt or wounded years ago, and we created a world of thoughts or reactions in our minds and our bodies which reflected that. Perhaps we felt they protected us, and maybe they did. Maybe they did protect us at that time. My finger was hurt, and afterwards, without my willing it, it pulled back and it protected me. And it continued to protect me well after healing took place. But I didn't need that protection anymore. So what about other ways I protect myself? Ways that are less tangible, less concrete, less bloody. How has my heart pulled back to protect me? Maybe in the past, my anxiety, anger, fear, depression have helped me get through an experience without going crazy, helped me to hang on, to feel less vulnerable, to feel safe, and get through another day. We protect ourselves when we feel unsafe, and we may feel unsafe whether or not there is any danger. Old conditioning, programmed by people who didn't know any better. But that unprocessed pain keeps our instinct of self-preservation vigilant. With trauma, abuse, our bodies, our psyches may shut down, they may retreat, we may cut off parts of ourselves as a way to protect ourselves. But that kind of protection has a profound influence on our lives. So we adapt to past experiences, not just abuse or trauma. It could be intense life experience, or what's an intense life experience for one person might not be for another person. It could be life experience, where we've often so adapted using maladaptive coping skills, which are then repeated in the present as if they're protective. So, to protect myself at times, has my heart pulled back automatically like my finger? Yes. Is that reflex really protecting me? I don't think so. I do think it has limited my ability to love, to be present, to be kind, all of which has a profound influence on my life, on my living and using our unity principles. Rumi said that your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. Some of those old coping skills are barriers to us giving and receiving love. My heart pulling back to protect me, that's a barrier. My heart pulling back to protect me separates me from what I learn here about who I am. Because at times I do watch myself struggling. I'm impatient, I might be anxious and scared. I'm struggling to get past those barriers, to get to a loving place. And my friends, I don't always get there. While at other times, my compassion and kindness are automatically, genuinely present. I am so filled with the divine. So, I've been hurt in the past. Can I cope with that as an old Jewish man from New York who has 69 years of life experience? Yes, I can. And I have. Perhaps you can relate in some way. What has cut you off from your compassion, from your infinite kindness? When does your heart pull back to protect you? Anyway, I decided to retrain my finger, to retrain it, to stay put, not to retreat when I lift up the dumbbell or when I put the dumbbells back. I had to be mindful, had to be aware. Again, I was aware. So I could watch it and tell my finger there was nothing to fear, there was no danger, and that I would take better care of it. Sure enough, at some point, while I consciously retrained it, it didn't pull back. And over time, it stayed put without my conscious direction and guidance. It was automatic. Of course, that was after we had the serious talk. Okay, it's okay. I gotcha. Thank you for protecting me. I don't need that anymore. You can rest. No, you're not the boss of me. You can rest. Trust me. So anyway, I thought, what if I could do those things that have, I could do that with those things that have a more serious impact on my life? What if I could retrain my thoughts, ways that I respond, ways that I pull back, pull inward, when I really don't need protection, ways that separate me from spirit, from being kind? What if I could? What if I could? Is that a ridiculous thought for someone who's coming to unity, who's come to unity from last century? Well, maybe. But then again, when we make a ridiculous statement or think a ridiculous thought and then notice it, we can respond quickly and choose again. What if I could retrain certain ways that I respond? Oh, of course I can. Of course, we all can. We can choose to retrain our thoughts, which seem automatic. How do I know? Because our esteemed licensed unity teacher, Kay Wood, shared a great quote with me. As spiritual beings, our superpower is choice. Unity is a retraining, helps us to rewire our brains. Course in Miracle too, it helps us to unlearn responses. It's an undoing of the way we see, followed by the acquisition of a new way of thinking. And then we can choose to choose again. Because if we don't unlearn those old responses, we remain enslaved by our past, limited vision about even having a choice, about being scared, judgmental, impatient, as we automatically tell ourselves things that mask as protection. Then we follow through with the corresponding actions. That negativity, those fears, judgments, all separate us from one another, and therefore from our higher power, however we define that. The Course in Miracles actually sees separation as a protection. And remember that the Course also says there is only one problem: separation. That's a high cost for protection. When I protect myself in old ways by using fear, judging, avoidance, anger, should I go on? I cut myself off from my Christ light, from my Buddha nature, from Source, from some of you. And I'm giving power to that which constricts my capacity to live in love fully, to that which is not me. Where can I go for protection, asks the mind, to which the ego replies, turn to me. It's Course in Miracles. In thinking that I'm protecting myself, I'm usually aligning myself with my ego, thereby cutting myself off from being the kind of person that Heather's dogs know that I am. Thinking that I'm protecting myself in those old ways, that's just an illusion. For as Howard Thurman writes, my ego is like a fortress. I have built its walls stone by stone to hold out the invasion of the love of God. The Course asks us to consider how much vigilance we've been willing to exert to protect our ego, and how little we have been willing to expend to protect our higher mind. Protecting my ego means I am a slave to my finger, to my thoughts, to my lower mind, as I sit cowering in my ego's fortress, marshaling my resources to fight off the invasion of the love of God and choosing my weakness over Christ's strength. But as a child of spirit, I can decide what is safe and loving and responsible, what I need to protect and how to do that. When I work from my higher mind and choose to decide as a child of spirit, not as a child of hurt and fear. Now, of course, when I work from my highest mind, I know that it's the power of God that really protects me. Sound familiar? Our prayer for protection? Charles Fillmore suggests that what we need to do is to gently brush away cobwebs of negativity that have been dimming the glow of our spiritual light. Isn't that lovely? Cobwebs of negativity, like the ways we protect ourselves, which have us withhold love, compassion, kindness. Cobwebs of protecting ourselves by making another the other. Less than, not deserving, not worthy, not as good as, or doing that to ourselves. Those often are thick cobwebs which may seem to have hardened into cables. And yet notice Fillmore says gently brush away. He doesn't say flagellate yourself. He doesn't say serve upon yourself a punishment worthy of your heinous crime, you despicable maggot. He says, gently brush away cobwebs of negativity that have been dimming the glow of your spiritual light. Back to awareness. It's so important that it's a non-judgmental awareness. And that's really the definition of mindfulness. A seeker asked his Zen master, what is the most important quality of a spiritual seeker? And the Zen master's response, self-observation without judgment. Mindfulness is freeing. True freedom is being without anxiety about imperfection. Yet another freedom for us to celebrate this month. Anyway, back to our cobwebs. They so easily return, don't they? Whisk them away Sunday morning, and they might be there at dinner, or maybe an hour or two later. But as someone said, having balanced, loving thoughts are like a path in the countryside. Originally, there was no path. Yet as people walk all the time in the same spot, a way appears. We all have the ability to notice, to be aware, to brush away those cobwebs of negativity, and then to choose to walk down a new path. And when we do that again and again and again, a way appears. As a psychiatrist told me once, there's an actual physical path in the brain that appears. I remember saying to Amalia, Reverend Frank, at one of my whiniest moments, which some of you have seen, I remember saying, oh, Amalia, but it's so much work. And her response was something like, so is staying in hell, dear. Yeah. Both Reverend Sandy and Reverend Karen hit awareness strongly last month, and I want to remind us of their words, because part of retraining is being reminded. I don't see how we can use that superpower of choice without first observing, noticing, being aware, Then deciding, is my mind an instrument through which I function or an instrument through which someone else functions? Is it my mother's voice? My disapproving physician's voice? Is it my rabbi, imam, minister's voice from decades ago? Whose thoughts am I thinking? And just whose mind is it anyway? Because if we are still operating from those old voices, we continue to exist in what the Course calls a protective shield of unawareness. Karen Gray spoke powerfully last month when she noted some ways we cope with this culture of racial injustice. We may recoil, forget, push it back, stay busy, let it recede from our awareness because it's so overwhelming and painful. And she said, we can turn away if we are among those who have that option. Ah, sweet protection. But it's hard to turn away these days. So perhaps now is the time to ask ourselves, how have I been protecting myself during these turbulent times? How have I been unaware? What will I do about it? We can be aware. We can be aware of dark, uncomfortable, embarrassing thoughts that we may be carrying and do so without condemning or judging ourselves. Radical compassion. That's what Tara Brach calls it in her book, Radical Acceptance. Bringing a clear, kind attention to our capacities and our limitations. Compassion. Compassion for ourselves, for perhaps thinking the unthinkable. Janice Coyle did a wonderful talk here a few months ago. She shared a post she saw on Facebook. A new world does not appear to us. It appears through us. How can that new world appear through us if we aren't aware of our cobwebs, if we don't have compassion for ourselves? Awareness puts us in a position of being able to make new choices and therefore add to that new world. We recognize. Then we can chastise ourselves, beat ourselves up for thinking that racist thought, for making that mistake. Or we can celebrate that we woke up. That maybe we were in an uncomfortable zone for a little bit and we stayed there. And then do something to help change the status quo of racism, homophobia, sexism, xenophobia. Cobweb vigilance, that's what's needed. And that's why some of us come here, I think, to enhance the glow of our spiritual lights. Joel Goldsmith puts it bluntly. Human beings are the unillumined. They are born and brought up in ignorance of their true identity. Ouch, Joel. I prefer how a Harvard psychologist puts it. Human beings are works in progress that mistakenly think they're finished. Which means that one day, I may be able to live in the zip code of loving acceptance, compassion, kindness, and not just visit there. One day, I may build a welcoming home with a solid foundation of non-judgmental consciousness. That one day, I may be able to pick up a 50-pound dumbbell. I'm a work in progress. As Myrtle Fillmore reminds us, we need to work within ourselves to release false truths that we hold, like that which does not protect us, that which holds out the invasion of the love of spirit. So, my unillumined companions, I bid thee illumine. Relax the barriers, for thou art guardian of the wounded finger, not the other way around. Thank you. But really, it's you who must decide that. Decide if your mind is an instrument through which you function or through which someone else functions. Decide whether you can experience kindness in your gaze when you look within or not. Decide what you really believe when you sing the prayer for protection. It's 2020. There is much at stake. Decide. We all depend on your choice. Blessings, my friends. And now, please join me in a meditation. Find a position that allows you to be alert and relaxed. And close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so. Rest your hands in an easy way. And allow your awareness to scan through your body, and whenever possible, soften and release areas of physical tension. Attend your breath. Take a few full breaths. Deep, full. Then allow your breath to be natural. There is no need to control it or fixate on it. Just a relaxed awareness. You will find that your mind naturally drifts off in thoughts. Thoughts are not the enemy, and you do not need to clear your mind of them. Just recognize when thoughts are happening. Be aware of them without getting lost in the storyline. And gently return to the breath. The breath is your anchor. This breath is your home base. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. You decide what that means when I say God for you. An impersonal presence, a spirit. Certainly in unity we'll believe that it is not a human presence. And then spend time in the silence. Let the words of prayer for protection wash over you, and take in what you can take in, and let the rest flow past for now. It will be there later. For now, together, let's enter the silence. The light of God surrounds you. The love of God enfolds you. The power of God protects you. The presence of God watches over you. Breathe deeply and return to your space. See which words linger. And when we sing the prayer for protection at the end of our service, be with it in a new way. See what you notice. See what you need to notice. And so it is.
Now I would like to share a fantasy that hopefully will help you relax some barriers and remove some cobwebs, or at the very least, start you on a positive journey forward for the week ahead.
Whatever feelings you have within you are attracting your tomorrow. Worry attracts more worry. Anxiety attracts more anxiety. Unhappiness attracts more unhappiness, and dissatisfaction attracts more dissatisfaction. And also, joy attracts more joy. Happiness attracts more happiness. Peace attracts more peace. Gratitude attracts more gratitude. Kindness attracts more kindness, and love attracts more love. Our job is an inside one, to change our world. All we have to do is change the way we feel inside. So how easy is that?